custom data layer values feature is one of the most powerful features within ListenLayer, and it's available on the ReactJS listener among most of the other listeners. This allows you to write simple but very powerful rules inside of ListenLayer to push custom values into your data layer, which can enhance your web analytics tracking by allowing you to add additional information as well as segment your data automatically based on the user's activity. Now, once this feature is enabled, you'll first want to ensure that you have created some custom variables within the global settings. Now, these are variables that can appear in the data layer as long as there's a rule to push a value into them. And they're available across all of your listeners to write custom rules for. And so in this case, we're going to focus on a variable here called page name. In this case, we're going to take our ReactJS screens, or when a route change and a path name changes, and we're going to give those pages a name, even though they're not really true page views in a traditional sense. So jumping into our custom values here, we have a simple rule, because right now we're just going to test this feature on the About Us page. We've named our rule, and you can also write a description. And what we're doing here is we want to see, does the event ReactJS route path occur? If that's true, and if our route to contains /about, then we want to give this a specific page name. And in this case, we're going to push the value about us. You can also insert variables from your data layer. So we're going to save this rule, and it's actually already been published. So let's jump over to our live website, and we're going to navigate to the home page, and we'll hit the About URL there, or the link there that changes the screen. And here you can see now the custom value page name is About Us is being pushed into the data layer. And this is available also. It's being read by Google Tag Manager and can be utilized here in the debug view. And you can capture this into Google Tag Manager itself and push it directly into your analytics tools, or use it for within further rules inside of Google Tag Manager. So this is a simple rule. Let's delete this rule and look at actually creating what we would call a lookup table rule. Now, what this could do is allow us to actually name all of our screens in a single rule. We're going to name this, and we want the ReactJS route path to be a part of our condition. And we also want the route to be a part of our condition. So similar setup to before, but we haven't actually written the condition rules. And we want to actually populate the data layer variable, which again comes from our global settings up here that we had created called page name. What this is going to do is it's going to create a table. And on the left-hand side, we have conditions. And if these conditions are met, then we're going to push values into our data layer over here. In this case, we're going to focus on just a single variable, but we can always have multiple variables that we're defining values for. And we're going to create a row for every single one of our screens. And the first thing is that we definitely want the ReactJS route path to equal true. And we want this route to contain a specific value from our data layer. So in this case, let's just name the About page. Let's name the Users page. Let's name the Contact page. And if we want to, we could actually say equals. Actually, it looks like our route from and route to has the entire URL. So if we are going to do an equals, then we would want to place the entire variable in here. This would actually allow us to define the same rule for the home page. Delete this final row because we're not going to need this. Actually, I'll explain, but we can write a catch-all rule here. So let's go ahead and name our screens. About us, there's contact. Now these are fairly obvious. It just illustrates the kind of scratching the surface of the possibilities here. Now, the table is going to be read from top to bottom, and once a match is found, it will stop reading the table. And so oftentimes it's important to put a catch-all at the bottom of the table, because if, for example, we create a new screen and it doesn't get categorized in here, it's going to get caught up in this last rule, and this value is going to be pushed into the data layer. Without this row, there would be no value pushed into a data layer for a screen that does not match these. So we've now filled out our entire table. And what's going to happen is, as it reads, once it finds a match, it'll just simply return this value into the data layer when this event is occurring. So we're going to save this, and we're going to publish the page name. Now, since we already had a session going here in our application, it's probably good to do a bit of a hard refresh and begin our navigation activity. So you can see here, we jump to the About page, and we have the page name About Us. Let's go to Users. And we have the page name Users. Let's go to Contact. We have, again, the page name Contact. And let's go back to the home page and see if the home page works. And yes, the home page works. So this is a very simple example, but shows you how you can use simple rules and lookup rules to manage information and push that data into the data layer based on activity that's actually occurring on your website. Now, once this is in the data layer, you could capture this information. For example, if you were building your tracking into Google Analytics, which traditionally tracks based on page views, and you want to utilize virtual page views, or for example, in GA4, you may want to actually push a page view event based on these activities. You may want to also include some parameter on that or some details in the event, such as the page name. So in that case, you would simply copy this property path, and in Tag Manager, remember that these are all available. They're being read in the data layer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are actual variables in the data layer yet. So we're going to go into Google Tag Manager. We're going to jump to variables, and we're going to create a new variable. It's going to be a data layer variable because that's where we're getting it from. And I'm going to paste the path. Now remember, I was over here, and to get this path name, I simply right-clicked on the page name, and I said copy property path. And I pasted it in here. And this is just the path to that variable. So page name exists within this element called route custom values, and that is at the top level. So I'm going to call this page name. And then we are going to save. And we're going to refresh our preview just by hitting the preview button here. And now we're going to navigate to the About Us again. We'll see that the page value or the page name value is there. And we're going to check out our activity here in the Tag Manager. And what we see now is we have a variable. Not only is it being read by GTM from the data layer here, but it is now made available for our use inside of all of our Google Tag Manager tagging. And so if you wanted to, for example, push this into Google Analytics, we would simply create an event tag. We'll use Universal Analytics just for simplicity. And we could call this page view. Maybe we push some other information into the action, but The page name itself, we might push into the label. So you can capture that information dynamically into Google Analytics simply by pushing that variable through GTM into the data layer. Again, these are just simple examples of how custom rules can really enhance your tracking. We're excited to see what you can do when you dig into this feature.